A little girl sat by the side of the road with a baby in her arms, exhausted and abandoned. When the millionaire pulled up in his luxury car, she simply said, "You're the man in the picture in my mum's wallet." What happened next would forever change the lives of all three, revealing secrets buried for years and proving that sometimes the real treasure isn't in the vaults we protect, but in the tiny arms that remind us who we truly are. Subscribe to the channel for heartwarming stories. Every day, the millionaire adjusted his designer tie as he surveyed the mountain landscape through the panoramic window of his penthouse. 20 stories above the city, he was isolated from everything he considered mediocre. His financial empire, built with calculated ruthlessness, was envied by many, but no one dared get too close. Solitude didn't bother him. On the contrary, it was his deliberate choice. The virtual assistant announced the day's meetings: 3 hostile takeovers, 2 international deals, a dinner with investors. Nothing that required emotion, only strategy. He adjusted the platinum watch on his wrist. Time was money, and he didn't waste a second on sentimentality. "Cancel the dinner," he ordered dryly. "Send the standard apologies and reschedule for next week." He went down to the private parking garage, ignoring the formal greetings of the staff. The chauffeur was waiting, but he dismissed the service with a gesture. He needed to drive alone, to feel the control, as he did when something disturbed him. Lately, strange dreams had been invading his nights, fragments of memories he thought he'd buried. Miles away, under the scorching midday sun, the little girl was trying to shade the sleeping baby in her lap with her own body. Her chapped fingers caressed the delicate little head as she stared fixedly at the road. Cars sped past, kicking up, dust that accumulated on her already dirty skin. She wasn't crying. The tears had dried up days ago when she realized her mother wasn't coming back. The small, battered teddy bear, her only toy, held within it the most precious treasure: a crumpled photo and a note with a name and an address. "If anything happens to me, look for this man," her mother had said once during a night of high fever when she thought she wouldn't survive. The girl looked up as a car slowed down on the shoulder. It wasn't the first time someone had stopped. Some people offered food, others just watched her with pity and drove on. Some had looks that scared her, making her hug her little brother tighter. Inside the car, the millionaire had his eyes fixed on the road, lost in memories he was struggling to suppress. Years ago, on that same highway, he had left behind the only person he had ever truly loved. Regret was a luxury he couldn't afford, but guilt accompanied him silently, like a shadow. The luxury car rounded the mountain curves when he saw her. A small, fragile figure sitting on the shoulder, seeming strangely determined despite the circumstances. Something in that child's gaze made him slow down. It wasn't compassion, a feeling he had suffocated years ago, but something more primal, almost instinctive. The girl raised her face, her tired but perceptive eyes watching, the car slowing down. The baby stirred in her lap, waking up with the noise of the engine. She soothed him gently, whispering promises she didn't know if she could keep. The millionaire stopped the car a few yards ahead. He watched in the rearview mirror the small figure and the bare feet. Something about that scene deeply disturbed him. He should drive on. Other people's problems were not his responsibility. Life was hard. He knew better than anyone. But he couldn't leave. The millionaire took a deep breath and got out of the car. The heat of the asphalt burned through the soles of his Italian shoes as he walked toward the girl. She didn't move, just watched him approach with a serenity that didn't match her age. "Are you lost?" he asked, keeping a safe distance. The girl didn't answer. She just stared at him, her eyes studying every detail of his face as if looking for something specific. The millionaire felt a strange unease. There was something familiar, In that look, something that destabilized him. "Where are your parents?" He tried again, his voice rougher than he intended. The girl stood up slowly, adjusting the baby in her thin arms. Her little body trembled with exhaustion, but there was a dignity in the way she carried herself. "You're the man in the picture in my mom's wallet," she said finally, her voice surprisingly clear. "She said if everything went wrong, I should look for you." The world seemed to stop. The millionaire felt the blood freeze in his veins as fragments of memory shattered in his mind. Those eyes, they were the same eyes he had decided to forget. The same silent determination, the same amber tone, almost golden under the sunlight. "Who is your mother?" he asked, his voice now just a hoarse whisper. The girl put her hand in the pocket of her faded dress and pulled out a folded and crumpled photo. She held it out with dirty but steady fingers. He took the photo with trembling hands. The paper was worn, but the image remained clear enough. A couple smiled in front of a roadside diner. He, younger, without the hardness that now marked his face. She, radiant, with the same eyes as the girl. "Where is she?" he asked, trying to control the storm that was brewing inside him. "She went to get help after the baby was born," the girl replied, looking at her sleeping little brother. "It's been 5 days. She said she'd be right back." The coldness that the millionaire cultivated as a shield threatened to break. 5 days. A woman alone, with a newborn, seeking help in that isolated region. His instinct told him that something terrible had happened. "How did you get here?" "I walked." The simple answer contained a universe of suffering. "I followed the marks on the photo. Mom showed me this place, said you lived up on that mountain." She pointed to the horizon, where the silhouette of his estate stood out. The baby began to cry, a weak and desperate sound. The girl rocked him with the experience of someone who had been doing it for a long time. "He needs milk," she said with growing concern. "I gave him sugar water, but it's gone." The millionaire looked at the road. He could leave them there, call social services, walk away from that situation. It was the sensible thing to do. He owed no explanations to anyone, let alone a child who had appeared out of nowhere. But those eyes, that photo, that past he had tried to bury under layers of money and power. "Come on," he said, surprising himself. "Let's get this sorted out." The girl hesitated, studying the elegant man with natural suspicion. "I'm not going to hurt you," he added, softening his tone. "I need to understand what happened." Slowly, the girl took a few steps forward. The millionaire opened the car door, watching how she shielded the baby with her own body as she got in. She sat in the back seat, still vigilant. "What's your name?" he asked, starting the car. "Mom called me Little Star," she replied, looking out the window. "But on the papers there's another name I don't like." He nodded in silence, swallowing the lump that formed in his throat. Little Star, the same nickname he used for her mother. The millionaire adjusted the car's AC as he watched the girl settling the baby in the rearview mirror. In his meticulously controlled world, this situation represented chaos. Every minute away from his commitments meant potentially millions lost. His cell phone was already overflowing with notifications. "I'm going to take you to a hospital," he announced firmly. "The baby needs to be examined." The girl clutched her little brother close, her eyes suddenly filled with fear. "They can't separate us," she said with a trembling but determined voice. "I promised Mom I'd take care of him." The millionaire frowned, annoyed by the situation that was getting more complicated every moment. "No one's going to separate you," he replied dryly, "but we need to find out what happened to your mother." As he drove, his mind calculated the implications: a missing ex-girlfriend, 2 abandoned children. Connections he didn't want to make surfaced in his consciousness. The timeline coincided perfectly with the end of their relationship years ago. That relationship that his family had made a point of destroying when he took control of the business. Why didn't you ever come back? The girl asked suddenly, her eyes piercing him through the rearview mirror. The question hit him like a physical blow. How could he explain to a child the selfish choices he had made? How could he justify abandoning someone he loved in the name of an empire that now seemed empty? It's complicated, he replied, looking away. Adult stuff. Mom said you had to leave, that it wasn't your fault. Those words hit him even harder. She didn't blame him, even after everything. That woman's generosity had always disconcerted him. Upon arriving at the hospital, the millionaire used his name to ensure immediate attention. The baby was taken for examination, with the girl refusing to leave him alone under any circumstances. While they waited, he made discreet calls, tasking private investigators to search for information about the whereabouts of the children's mother. Sir, a nurse called hours later, can we talk in private? He nodded, following her to a private room. The doctor waiting for him had a grave expression. The baby is dehydrated, but he will recover, she informed him. The girl shows signs of malnutrition and exhaustion. From my assessment, she has been taking care of her brother alone for several days, possibly a week. The millionaire processed the information in silence. We need to notify the authorities, the doctor continued. Unaccompanied children, possible abandonment, or... She didn't complete the sentence, but the meaningful look communicated the worst possible scenario. I know their mother, the millionaire stated, surprising himself with his own words. I'll take responsibility while the situation is clarified. The doctor studied him with distrust. Are you any relation to the children? The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. He had been asking himself the same thing since he saw the girl's eyes, since he mentally calculated the dates. I don't know yet, he answered honestly, but I can take care of them until we find out what happened. After another hour of bureaucracy and the promise of a visit from social workers, the millionaire found himself with a temporary custody authorization. The nurse handed the baby, now clean and fed, to his sister, who received him with visible relief. Let's go to my place, he said without looking directly at them. It's temporary until we locate your mother. During the drive, the millionaire made more calls, cancelling appointments, rescheduling meetings. His personal assistant seemed shocked by the out-of-the-ordinary instructions. Prepare 2 rooms in the East Wing, he ordered, and buy things for children, a baby and a girl of approximately 9 years old. As he hung up, he noticed the girl's gaze on him through the rearview mirror. We don't need charity, she said with a dignity that haunted him. We just need to find my mother. It's not charity, he replied, feeling strangely vulnerable. It's the least I can do, considering... He didn't complete the sentence. He wasn't ready for that possibility. He didn't want to admit that maybe, just maybe, that baby was his grandson. That girl might be the daughter of the woman he abandoned years ago. Upon arriving at the mansion, he quickly ushered them inside, avoiding the curious looks of the staff. He had to maintain emotional distance, resolve this situation, and return to the normalcy of his life. The millionaire's mansion stood imposingly on the lakefront, a monument to his wealth and isolation. The girl watched everything with wide eyes, while holding her little brother tightly against her chest. The cold elegance of the place contrasted violently with the days she had spent on the road. You'll stay here for now, the millionaire said, leading them through the immense entryway. The housekeeper will show you to your rooms. The middle-aged woman appeared almost instantly, her face a mask of contained curiosity. In 20 years of service, she had never seen children in that house. Her boss avoided any company, especially family. The rooms are ready, sir, she said discreetly, studying the little visitors. And the purchases arrived a little while ago. The millionaire nodded curtly. Show them where they'll be staying and arrange for a bath and clean clothes. He turned to leave, but the girl's voice stopped him. Are you going to look for my mother? The question, simple and direct, hit him with disproportionate force. He turned slowly, finding those amber eyes fixed on him, demanding an answer. I've already put people on it, he replied with a controlled voice. We'll do everything we can. She kept looking at him as if she could see through his armor of indifference. She always said you'd come back one day. The millionaire felt his stomach drop. The hope that woman had maintained, the faith she had transmitted to her daughter, was a burden he didn't know if he could carry. Rest now, was all he could say before retreating to his office. He closed the door and poured himself a scotch. His hands trembled slightly. Long suppressed memories surfaced against his will. The diner by the highway where he'd met her. The afternoons hidden from the world. The promises he'd made and broken. The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was the private investigator. Any news? He asked, trying to maintain his composure. Sir, we found hospital records of a woman with the name you provided. She was admitted 5 days ago to the county hospital with postpartum complications. The millionaire gripped the phone tightly. Is she okay? A brief silence. Sir, she's in a coma. She lost a lot of blood on the way to the hospital. The doctors don't know if or when she'll wake up. The news hit him like a physical blow. She was alive, but just barely. And the children had been alone for days because she had tried to get help. I'm going there, he said, hanging up before the investigator could respond. He walked quickly down the hall, stopping abruptly when he heard voices coming from the room designated for the children. The door was ajar. You need to eat, sweetie, the housekeeper was saying gently. I made something special for you and your little brother. I'm not hungry, the girl replied, her voice laced with distrust. What's going to happen to us now? The millionaire approached silently, peering through the crack in the door. The girl was sitting on the edge of the huge bed, clean and in new clothes, but still with the same watchful expression. The baby was sleeping in a makeshift crib next to her. My boss isn't a bad man, the housekeeper replied, delicately adjusting the sheets. He's complicated, alone for a long time. Mum said he used to be different, the girl commented, lowering her voice. She said he laughed a lot and had big dreams. The words pierced the millionaire like an arrow. That woman, even after being abandoned, had preserved a positive image of him for her daughter. The thought made him feel smaller, unworthy. What do you have there? The housekeeper asked, noticing the battered teddy bear the girl was holding against her chest. It's a secret, the child replied, clutching the toy. Mum said only I can open it. The millionaire retreated silently, his mind a storm of contradictory emotions. He knew he needed to go to the hospital to see with his own eyes the woman he once loved. But he also knew that he couldn't simply leave the children there, especially after what he had just heard. He entered the room, causing both of them to look in his direction. I need to go to the hospital, he announced, surprising himself with his own honesty. They found your mother. The girl's eyes lit up with hope. Is she okay? Can we see her? The millionaire hesitated. How could he explain to a child that her mother was fighting for her life, that she might never wake up? She's sleeping, he replied finally. The doctors are taking care of her. The housekeeper watched him with an intrigued expression. She had never seen her boss show any vulnerability. I want to go with you, declared the girl, getting up from the bed. I need to see her. It's not a good idea, he replied, uncomfortable with the intensity of those eyes. The baby needs to rest, and so do you. I promise I'll bring you news, he added, again surprising himself with his own gentleness. "Do you trust me to do that?" 3 days had passed since the millionaire had brought the children to his mansion. 3 days of visits to the hospital, watching the pale face of the woman who had once been his great love, connected to tubes and monitors. 3 days of avoiding the questioning looks of the doctors when they mentioned the remarkable resemblance between him and the baby. For the first time in years, his business wasn't at the center of his thoughts. Something was changing inside him, slowly, like ice melting after a long winter. That morning, upon returning from the hospital, he found the housekeeper in the kitchen, preparing a bottle with a worried expression. "What's wrong?" he asked, realizing immediately that something wasn't right. "It's the baby, sir," she replied, carefully measuring the powdered formula. "He's had a fever since early this morning. The girl hasn't slept, taking care of him." The millionaire felt a wave of concern that surprised him with its intensity. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" "The little one didn't want to bother you," the housekeeper replied with a meaningful look. "She said she'd already caused too much trouble." Those words hit him like a punch. The girl, despite her age and circumstances, was carrying a weight that no child should carry. She had taken on adult responsibilities, while he, a grown man, had spent years running away from his own. Without waiting for further explanation, he headed to the children's room. He knocked lightly before entering, a gesture of respect he didn't usually have. The girl was sitting on the floor next to the makeshift crib, humming softly to her restless little brother. When she saw him, her face assumed a defensive expression. "He's going to be okay," she said quickly. "He's just a little warm." The millionaire approached slowly and knelt beside her, ignoring the expensive fabric of his pants against the floor. The baby was clearly uncomfortable, his little face red and sweaty. "He needs a doctor," he said with a gentleness he didn't recognize in himself. "It's not your fault. Babies get sick easily." The girl bit her lower lip, fighting back tears. "I promised Mom I'd take care of him, that I wouldn't let anything bad happen." The millionaire felt a strange emotion squeeze his chest. He extended his hand hesitantly and, for the first time, touched the girl's shoulder. "You've been taking wonderful care of him," he said sincerely. "But now you're not alone in that responsibility anymore." The girl's eyes, so like her mother's, fixed on his, searching for truth in his words. "Will you help us even after Mom wakes up?" she asked, with a vulnerability that contrasted with her usual distrust. The question caught him off guard. He hadn't thought that far ahead. If the woman in the hospital survived, a possibility that the doctors considered increasingly remote, what would happen? Would he return to his isolated life, pretending nothing had happened? "Yes," he answered, surprising himself with the firmness of the word. "I'll help you." An hour later, they were in the office of the best pediatrician in the city. The doctor examined the baby carefully, while the girl watched every movement with watchful eyes. "It's just a mild infection," concluded the pediatrician, preparing a prescription. "With the right medication, he'll be fine in a few days." The relief on the girl's face was palpable. The millionaire felt a strange sense of fulfillment seeing that expression. How long had it been since he had genuinely cared about the well-being of someone other than himself? During the drive back, while the girl held her little brother in the back seat, she broke the silence. "Mom has a diary," she revealed suddenly. "It's hidden in my teddy bear. She wrote that you didn't know about us when you left." The millionaire felt his heart race. "She wrote about me?" The girl nodded solemnly. "She wrote that you had to choose between your family and her, that your family said they would never accept someone like her." Painful memories flooded his mind. His father, the ruthless patriarch, threatening to disinherit him if he didn't end that inappropriate relationship with a waitress with no future. The pressure to take over the family empire. The silent promises he had made to himself to come back to her one day when he was established and independent. Promises he had never kept. "Did you know she was expecting when you left?" the girl asked with a disconcerting maturity. "No," he replied, his voice choked with contained emotion. "I didn't know." The cell phone in his pocket vibrated. It was the hospital. Without taking his eyes off the road, he answered the call. "Sir," said the voice on the other end, "there's been a complication. We need you to come immediately." The hospital corridor seemed endless as the millionaire walked quickly toward the ICU. The girl held his hand tightly, refusing to be left behind. The baby had stayed with the housekeeper, already responding well to the medication. "What happened?" he asked the doctor who was waiting for them at the entrance to the unit. "She had a severe cardiac arrhythmia," the professional explained with a grave expression. "We managed to stabilize her, but her condition remains critical. There's something else I need to discuss with you in private." The millionaire looked at the girl, who squeezed his hand even tighter. "I don't want to be alone," she said, the fear evident in her voice. "Just for a few minutes," he replied gently. "I promise I'll be right back, and then we'll see your mother together." Reluctantly, the girl let go of his hand and sat in one of the chairs in the hallway, hugging the teddy bear tightly. In the private room, the doctor closed the door and faced the millionaire with seriousness. "We found something concerning in the new tests," she said, opening a folder. "There are signs that she may have been assaulted before arriving at the hospital." The millionaire felt his blood run cold. "Assaulted? What do you mean?" "Bruises that are not consistent with a fall or accident. We're talking about deliberate violence." The doctor paused, choosing her words. "We believe that someone may have tried to prevent her from getting here." The shock gave way to fury. Who would dare hurt her? A woman alone, desperate, with a newborn. "There's more," continued the doctor. "During the emergency procedure, she briefly regained consciousness. She managed to say only one sentence before returning to the coma. She asked us to let you know that he knows about the children and will try to take them from you." The millionaire felt the world spin around him. There was someone else in this story, someone who posed a threat. "Considering the situation," continued the doctor, "and your apparent involvement with the family, we believe it's important for you to take precautions. The authorities have already been notified, but it will take time for an investigation to be launched." He nodded mechanically, his mind trying to process the implications. Someone had tried to prevent her from getting to the hospital. Someone knew about the children. Someone she feared. "Can I see her now?" he asked, needing to confirm with his own eyes that she was still alive. The doctor led him to the bedside, where monitors and machines surrounded the fragile figure of the woman who had once been full of life. Her face was pale but still beautiful, with features he remembered perfectly, despite the years. "I'll get the girl," the doctor said, leaving him momentarily alone. The millionaire approached the bed, and after a moment of hesitation, gently touched the inert hand of the woman he had once abandoned. Memories he had suppressed for years flooded his mind. The sound of her laughter, the sparkle in her eyes, the dreams they had shared before ambition and family expectations pulled him away. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, words insufficient for years of absence. "I didn't know, I couldn't imagine." He heard light footsteps and moved quickly away from the bed. The girl entered, her eyes fixed on the still figure of her mother, her small face twisted in a mixture of relief and pain. "Mom?" she called softly, approaching. "We're safe now. He found us, like you said he would." The millionaire felt a lump in his throat, watching the girl hold her mother's hand delicately. There was so much untold history between them, so much time lost. I need to show you something, the girl said, turning to him. It's very important. With careful fingers, she opened a hidden seam in the teddy bear. From inside, she pulled out a small diary bound in worn leather and a thin folder. Mom said that if something happened to her, I should give this to the man in the picture. She held out the items to the millionaire. She said this would explain everything. With trembling hands, he first took the folder. Inside, he found official documents that made his heart stop. Birth certificates. The girls dated 9 years ago and the babies just a few weeks old. On both, the father field was filled with his name. She registered the children with my name, he murmured, stunned. Mom always said we were your children, the girl replied simply. She said that one day you would know and maybe come back to us. The millionaire felt dizzy with the revelation. Not only a daughter who had grown up without his knowledge or support, but also a newborn son. He was a father. The word resonated strangely and powerfully in his mind. He opened the diary with reverent care. The first pages contained accounts of the girl's pregnancy, hopes and dreams of a young single mother. Further on, he found darker entries detailing the harassment of a man, someone who had discovered the connection between her and the millionaire. He came back yesterday, read a recent entry. He said he knows about my condition, about the baby. He threatened to use the children as a way to pressure their father. He said he has proof that could destroy his reputation and take control of everything. A familiar name appeared in the diary pages, sparking a shocking revelation. His former partner, a man who had always envied his position and who, years ago, had found out about his secret relationship. The same man who had hinted to his father that romance could tarnish the family name. The last entry, dated the day the baby was born, was chilling in its urgency. He found out where we are. I need to take the children to a safe place. If anything happens to me, little Star knows what to do. She will find their father, and he, despite everything, will know the truth. The millionaire closed the diary, his mind a whirlwind of contradictory emotions. Anger for the lost time, guilt for the abandonment, fear for the threat looming over them all, and something else, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Love. A dormant love for the woman in the bed, and a new love, frightening in its intensity, for the two children who were his. She was right, the girl said, watching him intently. You believe us. Before he could answer, his cell phone vibrated. It was an unknown number. He answered hesitantly. Finally found your precious family? The voice was easily recognizable, his former partner. How touching. Unfortunately, it complicates your business quite a bit, don't you think? Imagine the headlines tomorrow. Millionaire hid illegitimate children for years. Or worse, millionaire involved in suspicious accident with ex-girlfriend. What do you want? The millionaire asked, containing his fury. What I've always wanted, your company, your position, everything that was denied to me while you, the daddy's boy, received everything on a silver platter. The voice dripped with venom. But don't worry, I'll be reasonable. Sign the transfer of the majority shares, step away discreetly, and your little makeshift family can live in peace. The millionaire looked at the girl, who was watching him with absolute trust, and at the unconscious woman who, despite everything, had never stopped believing in him. You're wrong, he replied with a calmness he didn't feel. I won't back down this time. In the company's boardroom, the millionaire watched the cityscape through the panoramic window, the city that had always seemed like a chessboard where every calculated move brought him closer to more power, now seemed distant, almost irrelevant. 3 days had passed since the threatening call. 3 days of reinforced security measures at the mansion, of tense visits to the hospital, where the children's mother remained in critical but stable condition. 3 days in which he had been, for the first time in years, confronted with something More important than his business, the safety of his newfound family. The door opened, and his trusted lawyer entered, accompanied by 2 private investigators. "We have news," the lawyer announced, placing a folder on the table. "And it's not good." The millionaire sat down, preparing for the worst. "Proceed. Your former partner has put together a complete dossier," explained the older investigator. "Manipulated documents suggesting that you knew about the children's existence all along, that you were paying their mother to keep them hidden for tax reasons." "That's absurd," interrupted the millionaire, feeling the anger rise. "I would never do that." "We know, sir," continued the investigator, "but he's built a convincing narrative. There are wire transfers that appear to come from your offshore accounts. Forged, of course, but convincing enough to raise doubts." "There's more," added the lawyer with a grave expression. "He's filed for guardianship against you, alleging psychological instability and erratic business decisions in recent days." "Guardianship?" The shock was visible on his face. "On what grounds?" "Your sudden absences, cancelled meetings, the sudden appearance of 2 children in your home. He's claiming that you're emotionally unstable and unable to manage your business." The millionaire stood up, walking again to the window. The trap was closing around him. His former partner had waited years for this moment, watching from afar, collecting information, waiting for a vulnerability to exploit. "The preliminary hearing is scheduled for tomorrow," informed the lawyer. "It will be quick, administrative, but we need to be prepared." "What about the children?" asked the millionaire, his primary concern now clear even to himself. "That's another problem," replied the lawyer hesitantly. "Social Services has been contacted with an anonymous complaint. They allege that you may have obtained the children illegally." The absurdity of the situation almost made him laugh, if it weren't for the real danger it represented. "I have the documents proving that they're my children." "Yes, but the circumstances are unusual. A social worker will come this afternoon for a preliminary assessment." When the meeting ended, the millionaire returned to the mansion with a growing weight on his shoulders. He found the housekeeper in the living room, watching through the window as the girl played in the garden, the baby asleep in a stroller next to her. "Sir," said the housekeeper, noticing his expression, "has something serious happened?" "Business problems," he replied vaguely. "Nothing to worry about." But his gaze remained fixed on the children. For the first time, he allowed himself to see clearly the similarities between them, the shape of the girl's eyes identical to his, the baby's nose, which already showed the characteristic features of his family, his children. The simple idea still frightened and amazed him at the same time. The girl noticed his presence and waved shyly. In recent days, the initial distrust had been replaced by a cautious acceptance. She watched him constantly, learning, his gestures, his expressions, as if trying to reconcile the real man with the stories her mother had told her. The millionaire went out to the garden, sitting on the bench next to her. "How's your little brother doing today?" he asked gently. "Better," she replied, delicately adjusting the blanket covering the baby. "The fever hasn't come back." A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the distant sound of birds and the breeze in the leaves. "Are you really our father?" the girl asked suddenly, her amber eyes fixed on him. The question caught him off guard, although he knew she would eventually ask it. "Yes," he replied sincerely, "although I didn't know until you found me. Mom said that one day you would know and you would be happy." She hesitated. "Are you happy?" The millionaire felt something breaking inside him, a last barrier of ice around his heart. "I am," he confessed, surprising himself with the truth of those words. "More than I imagined would be possible." The girl smiled, the first genuine smile he had seen on her face. "Mom will be happy when she wakes up." The moment was interrupted by the sound of the doorbell. The housekeeper appeared at the door, accompanied by a middle-aged woman with a serious expression and a folder in her hands. "The social worker is here, sir," announced the housekeeper with evident concern. The millionaire felt his stomach drop. He stood up, forcing a reassuring smile for the girl. "Stay here with your brother. I need to talk to this lady." The assessment was tense and thorough. The social worker inspected every room, asked numerous questions, examined documents. Despite maintaining a professional demeanor, it was evident that she had arrived with preconceived notions. "Understand, sir," she said finally, "the situation is unusual. A single man, with no history of relationship with children, suddenly claiming paternity of 2, while the mother is hospitalized under suspicious circumstances. The documents prove the relationship," he argued, "and the hospital will confirm that I have been visiting the mother daily." "Yes, but there are allegations of emotional instability against you." She consulted her notes. "And your former partner has presented testimony indicating concern for the well-being of the children in your care." The manipulation was evident, but the millionaire knew that losing control would only confirm the accusations against him. "What do you suggest then?" he asked, keeping his voice calm. "For now, a temporary measure," replied the social worker. "The children will be placed in foster care until the mother's situation is resolved or the court decides on your capacity." The world seemed to collapse around him. "Are you proposing to separate the children from the only person they can call family right now?" "It's standard procedure in cases like this," she replied impassively. "The order will be served tomorrow." After the social worker left, the millionaire remained motionless in the room, trying to process what had just happened. In a matter of days, he had discovered he was the father of 2 children. In a matter of hours, he could lose them. The millionaire woke up before dawn after a restless night's sleep. For the first time in years, he didn't immediately check. His cell phone didn't worry about stock quotes or financial reports. His thoughts were fixed on a single mission: protecting his children. Something had changed inside him in the last few hours. The calculating coldness that characterized him in business now gave way to a fierce, primal determination. The voice of his lawyer echoed in his mind, warning about the risks. If you defy the order of social services, you could further complicate your situation. But he knew there was no alternative. He wouldn't allow his children to be taken to a shelter, separated from each other, just when they were beginning to feel safe. With silent movements, he went to the children's room. The door was ajar. To his surprise, the girl was already awake, sitting on the floor next to her brother's crib, rocking him gently. "I had a bad dream," she explained when she saw him. "I dreamed they were going to take us away." The millionaire sat down beside her, impressed with her perception. "No one's going to separate you," he said firmly. "I promise." "The lady from yesterday didn't like us here," observed the girl, her eyes revealing an understanding beyond her age. "She thinks you don't know how to take care of children." "Maybe she's right," he admitted with a sad smile. "I've never been a father before, but I'm learning." The girl studied his face for a moment. "Mom said that some things you learn by doing." Those simple words, filled with wisdom, strengthened his resolve. He had made mistakes in the past, abandoned people he loved, allowed pride and ambition to dictate his choices. He wouldn't make the same mistakes again. "We need a plan," he said, standing up, "and I'm going to need your help." Hours later, the millionaire entered the courtroom with the confident demeanor that had always characterized him in business. His lawyer by his side seemed less certain. "Are you sure about this?" whispered the lawyer, visibly worried. "We can seek a less dramatic settlement." "I'm sure," replied the millionaire, his eyes fixed on the figure of his former partner, sitting across the room with a smile of satisfaction. The judge entered, and everyone stood up. After the initial formalities, the former partner's lawyer took the floor, presenting a carefully constructed narrative. An emotionally unstable millionaire, erratic business decisions, a supposed family that had appeared out of nowhere. "We request a temporary restraining order," concluded the lawyer, "to protect not only the interests of the company, but the defendant himself from his impulsive decisions." When it was his turn, the millionaire's lawyer began to present counterpoints, but was interrupted by his client. "If I may, Your Honor," said the millionaire, standing up, "I would like to make a personal statement." The judge nodded, curious. "Proceed." 9 years ago, I abandoned the woman I loved due to family pressure and personal ambition," he began, his firm voice echoing in the silent room. "I didn't know she was pregnant. I didn't know I had a daughter. And until a few days ago, I didn't know I had a newborn son." Murmurs ran through the room. His former partner looked less confident now. "When I discovered the truth, when I met my children, something changed in me," continued the millionaire. "I realized that I had spent years building an empty fortune, isolating myself from what really matters." He removed some documents from the inside pocket of his suit jacket. "These are DNA tests, confirming the relationship between me and the children. And this," he added, handing over another set of documents, "is my resignation from my position in the company, effective immediately." The surprise was general. His lawyer stared at him, astonished. The judge examined the documents carefully. "I am willing to give up control of the company I built," explained the millionaire, "but I will not give up my children. Their mother is in a coma, fighting for her life after being attacked for trying to protect them." He turned to his former partner, who now looked pale. "And we have evidence of who may be behind that attack." His lawyer, recovering from the surprise, stood up and presented the judge with a sealed envelope. "Testimonies from witnesses who saw the gentleman in question in the vicinity of where the children's mother was found injured." The judge examined the material with a serious expression. "These are serious accusations." "I'm not here to accuse anyone," replied the millionaire, "only to defend my right to care for my children while their mother recovers. If that means giving up my financial empire, so be it." The former partner stood up abruptly. "This is absurd, a staging to manipulate the court." "Order!" demanded the judge, banging her gavel. At that moment, the door to the courtroom opened, and all heads turned. The girl entered, holding firmly to the housekeeper's hand, who was carrying the baby. With determined steps, she approached the judge. "Your Honor," she said in a clear voice, despite her evident nervousness. "May I speak?" The judge, visibly surprised, looked at the millionaire, who seemed as surprised as everyone else. This wasn't part of the plan. "What's your name, dear?" asked the judge gently. The girl gave her name and continued, "That man over there," she pointed to the former partner, "was the one who scared my mom. He came to our house, yelled at her. He said he was going to use us to hurt my dad." A heavy silence fell over the room. The girl took something from her pocket. The small, battered teddy bear. "Inside it, there's a letter from my mom," she explained, handing it to the judge. "She said that if something happened to her, I should show this." The judge carefully examined the contents of the teddy bear. In addition to the diary that the millionaire already knew about, there was a sealed envelope addressed "to the court if necessary." With the court's permission, she opened the envelope and read its contents in silence, her expression gradually changing to shock and then outrage. "This is..." She paused, composing herself. "This document contains a detailed description of threats and harassment with dates, locations, and specific events." She looked directly at the former partner. "Including a recorded confession, apparently without your knowledge, where you threaten to use the children as a form of pressure against your former business partner." The former partner's face lost all color. "This is a fraud, a desperate attempt to..." "The recording is stored on a USB drive inside the bear," interrupted the judge, pulling out a small flash drive. "I request that it be played immediately." The court technician connected the device to a computer. The voice that echoed through the speakers left no room for doubt. It was the former partner, explicitly threatening the children's mother, revealing his plan to use the children for emotional and financial blackmail. "He'll never believe they're his," said the voice on the recording. "But the doubt will be enough to destabilize him, and when I have control, you'll just be a forgotten nuisance." The murmur in the room grew. The former partner's lawyer requested a recess to consult his client, but it was too late. The recording continued, incriminating, making it clear that the attack on the children's mother had not been a coincidence. "Your Honor," said the prosecutor who was accompanying the case, "in light of this evidence, we request the immediate arrest of Mr. Former Partner's name on suspicion of assault and harassment." As the officers approached the former partner, the millionaire went to the girl, who was watching everything with wide eyes. "Did you know about the recording?" he asked in a low voice, kneeling down to be at her level. She nodded. "Mom said, it was our secret, that it should only be used if something really bad happened." The millionaire felt a mixture of pride and pain. That woman, whom he had abandoned years ago, had protected not only her children, but him, anticipating the danger with a clarity he had never had. The hearing was temporarily suspended. In the hallway, his lawyer approached him, still stunned by the events. "I've never seen anything like it in 20 years of my career," he confessed. "But your situation is now complicated. You resigned from your position in the company unnecessarily." The millionaire smiled, watching the girl who was now holding her little brother in her arms with the help of the housekeeper. "It wasn't unnecessary," he replied quietly. "It was a choice. The first genuinely mine in years." When the hearing resumed, the atmosphere was completely different. The former partner had been removed, his lawyer visibly uncomfortable with the turn of events. "In light of the new evidence," announced the judge, "the accusations of instability are denied. As for the custody of the children," she paused, looking at the millionaire, "considering the legal recognition of paternity and the mother's health situation, I grant temporary custody to the father, pending periodic evaluations by social services." An immense weight seemed to lift from the millionaire's shoulders. The battle wasn't completely won, but the first and most important obstacle had been overcome. After the final procedures, he approached the girl, who was waiting for him with a mixture of anxiety and hope. "Can we stay with you?" she asked, her small voice revealing the fear she had hidden so well. "Yes," he replied, feeling a tenderness that he had never imagined being capable of. "You're going to stay with me, and together we'll take care of your mother until she gets better." The girl hesitated for a moment, then did something that surprised him completely. She took a few steps forward and hugged him. The gesture, simple but profound, broke down the last barriers in his heart. Carefully, he returned the hug, feeling the small, fragile body against his. The housekeeper approached with the baby, who was now awake, his curious little eyes watching the world. "Let's go home," said the millionaire, the words carrying a meaning they never had before. That night, after putting the children to bed, he remained on the balcony of his mansion, contemplating the lake that he had always seen only as part of a real estate investment. Under the moonlight, the water reflected like liquid silver, beautiful in a way he had never noticed. His cell phone rang, pulling him from his thoughts. It was the hospital. "Sir," said the doctor's voice, with an urgency that made his heart clench. "There's been a change in the patient's condition. You need to come immediately." The tone didn't reveal whether the change was positive or negative. Throughout the journey to the hospital, the millionaire prepared himself for the worst, while trying to cling to hope. Upon arriving at the ICU, he was greeted by the doctor, whose expression, to his immense relief, showed a slight smile. "She's showing signs of increased brain activity," explained the professional. "She hasn't fully awakened yet, but she has begun to respond to stimuli. It's significant progress." The millionaire felt the tears he had held back for days finally escape. He approached the bed where the woman he had once abandoned was fighting to return to life. "I'm here," he whispered, holding her hand, "and our children are safe. We're waiting for you." For a moment, almost imperceptibly, he felt a slight squeeze in his fingers. A minimal but definitive sign. She was coming back. 6 months had passed. Since that day in court, the lakeside mansion, once a monument to solitude, now overflowed with life. Children's laughter echoed through the halls, toys scattered across the once impeccable gardens, and the oppressive silence had given way to a chaotic family symphony. On the sunny porch, the millionaire watched the scene before him with a sense of fulfillment he had never imagined possible. The girl, his daughter, ran across the lawn, chasing soap bubbles that floated in the spring air. Her amber eyes, so like his, sparkled with contagious joy. The baby, now almost 8 months old, crawled with determination on a colorful blanket, exploring the world with insatiable curiosity. And next to the baby, sitting in a wheelchair, was her, still pale, thinner than before, but undeniably alive. A long recovery process continued, with daily progress that the doctors considered almost miraculous. 3 weeks after the trial, she had finally awakened from her coma. Her first words, whispered with difficulty, were about the children. When she learned that they were safe with their father, a faint smile lit up her exhausted face. Rehabilitation had been difficult, with moments of frustration and despair, but the same determination that had kept her fighting alone for years now propelled her to recover every movement, every ability. The millionaire had remained by her side at every step, a constant presence that surprised even the most skeptical among the hospital staff. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, noticing his contemplative gaze. He approached, sitting next to her wheelchair, about how life can change completely in a matter of days. She smiled, that smile that he had never been able to completely forget, even in the darkest years of his self-imposed solitude. "Do you still miss it?" she asked, referring to the business life he had left behind. The millionaire shook his head. Surprisingly, no. And it was true. After his resignation, he had transferred most of his shares to a trust fund, keeping only enough to ensure the children's future. The fortune, once his sole measure of success, now seemed only a means to much more important ends. "The foundation is growing faster than we expected," he commented. "More than 50 children have already benefited from the foster care program." This was his new mission. Weeks after her initial recovery, he had announced the creation of a foundation dedicated to children in vulnerable situations, especially those separated from their parents by tragic circumstances. The project had started modestly but quickly gained larger proportions, attracting donations and volunteers. "Our experiences define who we become," she said, watching the daughter who was now approaching with her hands full of wildflowers. "I always knew there was something greater in you beyond that armor you built." The girl arrived breathless, extending her makeshift bouquet to her mother. "Look what I found near the lake. They're the same color as your eyes." "They're beautiful, little star," replied the mother, caressing her daughter's face with tenderness. The millionaire watched the scene, feeling a wave of gratitude so intense that he could barely breathe. For years, he had lived in a self-imposed prison, convinced that isolation was the price of success, that feelings were weaknesses to be overcome. "I'm going to get the baby to take a walk around the lake," announced the girl, now much more confident and cheerful than the frightened child he had found by the side of the highway. "Don't go too far," warned the millionaire, a paternal reflex that still surprised him. When they were alone again, she reached out, touching him gently on the arm. "Thank you," she said simply, "for believing in them, for believing in me, even after so long." "I should have come back," he admitted, finally verbalizing the regret he had carried in silence. "I should have looked for you." "The past can't be changed," she replied, with the serene wisdom that had always characterized her. "But we build the future with the choices we make today." He nodded, admiring how she managed to find forgiveness where many would hold only resentment. It was this ability that she had transmitted to her daughter, the ability to see beyond circumstances, to believe in possibilities when everything seemed lost. "The doctors believe I'll be able to walk again in a few months," she said, changing the subject. "Physical therapy is showing promising results." "It doesn't matter how long it takes," he replied, covering her hand with his. "We'll be here, together." The word "together" hung between them, laden with meanings and possibilities. They had agreed to proceed slowly, rebuilding a relationship now based on very different foundations than those of their youth. It was no longer just passion, but a deep understanding born of shared experiences, of pain and redemption. The sound of children's laughter drew their gazes again. The girl carefully pushed her brother's stroller along the stone path, narrating animatedly everything she saw, as if the baby could understand every word. "She'll be an extraordinary person," commented the millionaire, watching his daughter with a pride he had never imagined feeling. "She already is, actually. Her strength, her compassion. She saved us all, in a way." "She has a lot of you in her," replied the mother with a smile. "The determination, the ability to observe, even that look when she's planning something." The millionaire laughed, recognizing the truth in those words. Despite the years of separation, traits of his had flourished in the daughter he hadn't known. And now he saw similar characteristics beginning to emerge in the baby, his son, an unexpected gift that had arrived in his life when he least expected it. A light breeze blew from the lake, bringing the scent of fresh water and wildflowers. The sun began its descent on the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. It was the time of day he most appreciated now, the quiet interlude before family dinner, when time seemed to slow down. "I've been thinking," he said, hesitantly, "about transforming the east wing of the mansion into a space for children from the foundation. A place where they can receive education, therapy, medical attention." "It's a wonderful idea," she replied, her eyes shining with approval. "This place has too much space for just one family." "One family," he repeated, savoring the meaning of the word that had seemed so strange and distant for so long. "That's what we are now, isn't it?" "We always were," she replied softly. "Even when we were apart. Even when you didn't know." The girl returned, the baby now more restless, reaching his little arms out towards his father. The millionaire took him carefully, still marveling at the feeling of trusting those small hands that clung to him so certainly. "He's trying to say something," commented the girl, watching her brother intently. "I think he's trying to call you Dad." The baby babbled unintelligible sounds, but the gaze fixed on his face was unmistakable. Recognition, trust, love. Pure feelings that didn't require financial return, didn't ask for proof of worth, simply existed, unconditional. At that moment, watching the baby in his arms, the girl by his side, and the woman who had given him a second chance at life, the millionaire understood a truth that all his money and power had never revealed to him. The greatest treasure wasn't in the vaults he had protected for years, but in the hearts that now beat in sync with his. "It's almost dinner time," announced the housekeeper from the porch, her once stern face now softened by the affection she had developed for the children. "Shall I serve out here tonight? The evening is lovely." "That would be perfect," replied The millionaire helping to push the wheelchair towards the garden table. As the family gathered for the meal under the sky that slowly filled with stars, he was certain that all the fortunes he had accumulated in life couldn't compare to the wealth he had found in those simple moments. Sometimes life's true purpose reveals itself in the most unexpected places. In his case, in the trusting gaze of a girl sitting by the side of the highway, guarding her most precious treasure and waiting with unwavering faith for the return of someone she barely knew. And so, in the heart of that man who had once been known only for his coldness and ambition, a profound understanding was born that love, when it finally finds its way, has the power to redeem even the most lost souls, transforming emptiness into fulfillment and solitude into purpose. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to receive new stories every day. What would you do in the millionaire's place? Comment below and share this story with someone special.